This session is titled Tackling Tech Remotely. It's probably especially relevant right now. It's presented by Chris Grant, the Community Relationships Officer, and Alex Barker, the Advice and Information Officer at AbilityNet. Now, within this presentation, we're going to hear about how AbilityNet, like many charities, were forced to shift their strategy in a time of crisis.
Welcome to our session. My name is Chris Grant. I'm the Community Relationship Officer at AbilityNet, based up in the Highlands, and delighted to be joined by my colleague.
My name's Alex Barker, and I'm the Advice and Information Officer, and I'm talking to you from Coventry, so I'm not on a beach, unfortunately.
Great, thank you, Alex. So we're looking forward to today, and we're really thankful to Charity Digital for inviting us along to talk to you today and be part of this exciting conference. So sit back and relax, and we'll look forward to your questions at the end.
So we thought it would be useful to talk to you about what our vision is. So we've got 20 years of experience. We're supported by IBM and Microsoft. Other services include disabled students assessment, workplace support, and accessibility consultancy. Next slide, please.
Great, thank you, Alex. So at AbilityNet, we offer a free IT support service for older people and disabled people across the UK. I can talk from volunteer experience myself, as I've been a volunteer with the charity for over 2.5 years. And we can help with things such as any IT issue. So if it's setting up new equipment, they were having technical issues, and even showing you how to stay connected with friends and family, and in particular during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's vitally important that we enable people to keep in touch with their friends and their family, as everyone is stuck in for just now. And using online services, again, for example, using the NHS as an example, being able to communicate with their specialist, being able to have a consultation from the comfort of your home. So we want our volunteers to make sure that we're there ready to help the UK community to make sure that we can keep them connected. And in this picture, one of our volunteers helping a client with their iPad a few years ago. And it's just the all-around empowerment, and it's great to see. And we'll talk about that later on from one of our volunteers, Miles, who speaks to Maggie later in the presentation. So the digital divide and different barriers are huge. And there's lots of different barriers, which we'll probably all agree and some may disagree with. And I've picked out the top 5 in my personal view to this. So anxiety, disability, the health concern, geographic, broadband and cost, knowledge, and social isolation. I really want to, though, to focus on 2. And those 2 are the geographic part of the digital divide. Now, the digital divide for the geographical areas is where you are in the UK. And we're hearing this more and more. So me living up in the Highlands, we're delighted we get fibre broadband. Before it was standard broadband. And now I'd probably say, particularly during the pandemic, the internet has proved to be vital. And as, for example, using Zoom, using Teams, a good broadband connection is vital. And a lot of folks that get in touch with the service say to us, well, our broadband's not fast enough, so we can't keep in touch with friends and family. But there's so many different options out there which you can use. And I personally feel these days that the broadband should not be a barrier. And a lot of folks say to us about the cost of broadband. And the service providers across the UK have done an exceptionally good job of listening to the public and saying, well, what can we offer differently? And some service providers have said, well, we'll provide broadband packages specifically for people on benefit, on disability benefit, on pension, or anyone out of employment. And there's been some even have said, well, you need your basic internet even for 30 days for looking for jobs, then it's there. And I think it's really inspiring to see that companies are listening to the public to make sure that both the public's need and the business itself meets its own needs and expectations. One of the other key parts of this is the social isolation. social isolation is huge, even prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we see the word social isolation being used more and more and more. And one of the big things is people can't see their friends and family, for obviously for the real reasons of COVID just now. And people are stuck in. So what we're seeing at AbilityNet is that people are getting in touch with the service to say, well, we want to keep in touch with our grandkids, or our granny needs to get access to join a Zoom. And personally, my family are spread throughout Scotland, and we've had a great tradition now since the pandemic started of having quizzes, and it's great fun because we've not seen each other over probably coming up to 18 months, and we're able just to take an hour and a half and have just a little bit of entertainment. And even within AbilityNet, we host a quiz, usually on the last Friday of the month, and sometimes we have some live music, and it's all done by Zoom. And I think it's fantastic that we can all get together because, for example, Alex and I haven't seen each other face to face since December. It would have been of 2019, at our Christmas party. And again, it's when you get to see people face to face, you're going to say, well, wow, I've not seen you in a long time. And what we do on a regular basis, we're speaking to people all the time. And work colleagues, I'm sure, will say the same thing to you. We'd love to see someone face to face because it's not the same. And we're finding the big part of the social isolation, it mixes with the cost, because some people are saying, well, the general feeling is the internet is too costly. But actually, it's not if you look at the different things. And we understand the hesitation of some people that say to us, actually, no, we don't want the internet because it's too costly. But we want to change that attitude, and hopefully with your help, and I'm sure with your clients and anyone that you work with, you'll be able to essentially get that message out around isolation.
I just wonder if I can come in on that.
Well,
I certainly think that a lot of our clients say there's nothing on the internet for me, but I like classic cars. I like classic planes. I know, Laurel and Hardy films, but there's nothing on the internet for me. And I always say to them, well, actually, if you go onto YouTube, there's probably loads of stuff like Laurel and Hardy or classic aeroplanes, or you can find lots of photos on classic cars. And sometimes you've got to give them a carrot, haven't you, to try and get them interested in. And if they don't want to have broadband installed, just start up with a 3 or 4G mobile card. It won't give you the fastest, but it might light that little spark which says, right, I know now that there's lots of stuff on the internet which I'm going to want to look at.
exactly. And we see it happening all the time, and it's all about hobbies and interests. But just before we hand over to Alex to talk about just prior to the pandemic, to give you a general snapshot of our service, we touched on it very briefly. We are a UK charity providing that IT support, as we touched on. We have got 330 volunteers across the UK, with various coordinators covering each area. And Alex is going to touch on how the service looked prior to the pandemic, and we're going to talk you through the journey of where we are today.
So, in the good old days before the pandemic, most of, if not all, of our volunteer support was carried out face to face by a talented team of over 300 volunteers. This support would be carried out in clients' homes or libraries or community centres. Of course, when we were going out to see people, there were lots of overheads associated with travel expenses and so forth. Another issue was the time spent travelling to clients. For example, take a rural county like Norfolk or Suffolk. You could be doing a round trip of 60 or 70 miles just to go and see a client. Now, remote support might have been offered as a service where there wasn't anyone nearby that could assist, but that wasn't our normal modus operandi. Can we have the next slide, please? And this is one of our happy volunteers with a happy client, and that's a good depiction of how we used to do things, but we've had to change. So if we could have the next slide. Okay, so first of all, it's been a really interesting time to be working for a charity that's been supporting clients with IT issues. We have been asked to do things that we never would have normally been asked for. So questions might have been, how do we get on the vulnerable list for doing my shopping at Tesco's? Or how do I get an iPad set up so I can talk to my grandfather who's seriously ill in hospitals? And our requests for support have gone up by at least 20%, if not more. All of our support has gone remote. This is to protect clients and volunteers. So this means that our volunteers could be in Glasgow supporting someone in Glossop. Local local councils and social services teams and local charities are referring clients to us because they're inundated and they haven't got the support available, but they know where to go. We have the knowledge and skills to help. What we've also found out that time and money is saved. It takes 5 or 10 minutes to connect remotely to someone's computer. You can probably sort them out within half an hour and then job done. If we could have the next slide, please. What's going to happen in our future? So we've looked at our crystal balls and they're saying we're quite sure that whatever the new normal is, we won't be supporting our clients in the way that we did before the pandemic. In fact, we had a meeting today, and that's the general consensus. We still want to provide remote support. We will still offer face-to-face support, but that's going to depend a lot on the vaccination rollout. And we've previously said that we would guess that remote support is going to be the norm as opposed to the exception. There are still cases where in-person support is needed. Certain tasks and/or individuals are going to still need help. So a good example might be someone who's having issues with their printer that's chewed up paper, or their printer that needs their ink changing. We're also looking at doing a lot of support with our volunteers to become more confident in remote support, because it's been a big change in culture, as I'm sure Chris will testify to. Our volunteers love that face-to-face client relationship. They can have a cup of tea and maybe a biscuit or two. When you're talking to someone remotely, it actually seems quite different. So what we're doing is trying to roll out training to volunteers to get them to be more confident when it comes to remote support.
Yeah, just something you touched on there, Alex, and it's about that remote support via face-to-face. And face-to-face, support, we were able to sit down with a client and when we say client, is say we don't charge, so that all the service is free, but having a sit-down chat with them and just talking to them about non-IT. So some might talk to you about the television, some might talk to you about sport, and some might say to you, well, this is, my grandkids, they've been doing this. And that's the bit that I personally miss from a volunteer perspective, that we're not able to do that. However, volunteers, and I'm sure many of them do, I certainly do, is take the time. We're not just going to phone them and say, hello, my name is X, Y, and Z. We're phoning you from AbilityNet. We hear you've got a problem with something. It's about having a chat with them initially. And some of them might say to you, well, actually, this has been happening, or have you seen this on the television? I've learned personally from a lot of people about Coronation Street, about EastEnders and things happening on television. They say, "Oh, did you see that program?" And you know, I actually find if the remote support, if you take time to just have a chat with them prior to supporting them, actually the understanding becomes better, because you've almost started a bond. You've started that relationship with someone that you actually listen. You know, you've listened to them, and if they've got any worries, and then you have a chat with them to lead on with IT. What's your perspective on that, Alex?
Sure, I totally agree. I think, and I've worked in a call center for a year and a bit, and when we worked in a call center, we were just like, we've got to give the client what they want, we've got to get them off, we've got to talk to the next client. Here at AbilityNet, we end up having a nice chat with them, because a lot of our clients are so lonely, aren't they? I mean, as Chris might say, you might get a woman who says, I was married to my husband for 28 years and he's just died, and now I can't use the computer. And we try to talk them through what they've got to do. And I think most of our volunteers, if not all, are really, really understanding of some of the difficulties that older and disabled people are going to have. And I've certainly chatted to people for 45 minutes, and they've come off saying, "Thank you for listening." And it's great, because within AbilityNet, everyone feels that they're doing a really, really good job, and they're trying to help the individual. And actually, that's about what working in the charity sector is. It's all about what you can do to help someone else, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, this, I'm sure, is your charity that you're involved with, and will be offering a lot of different services remotely at the moment because of the pandemic. Some charities have said that they can't provide that support remotely, and that's understandable. And if you need any advice or general information on remote, we'd absolutely love to speak to you, because we're all in it together. We are the charity sector, and I say it when they're building it all the time. Charity sector is one big family, and that's something we have to do. We all work together. We all have one aim and objective, and that's to help people. So that's the key message I would say from that.
And I certainly think in the past, charities were quite possessive about their clients. Let our clients, you can't take them, let ours. And then they're going, well, actually, they're our clients, but we don't have the skill set that you do. Can you help them out? And we'll say, of course. And I certainly think this pandemic has got charities working with charities that might never have done so, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's all about collaboration, as you say. It's about working together to share each other's skill set,
Yep.
And to share each other's knowledge of the sector. So we're going to share a video with you. This is one of our volunteers in Wiltshire, Miles Pilling. Miles is the coordinator for Wiltshire, and he talks to one of our clients called Maggie. And I'm going to play it, and just listen to the words, and we're going to share the words with you at the end too, that we think that's really important to this video.
Well, my name is Margaret Dobson, and I live in Wiltshire. I've always been involved with books, both as a teacher, lecturer, and a writer. Well, I have macular wet degeneration. I've had it for a long time in one eye, which is now not much use. And suddenly the good eye began to go. Life just fell apart. My link to AbilityNet is through a particular person called Miles Pilling. And I was at a desperate state when he came, and I have now managed to get some of my life back on track. He came magically on his electric bicycle and came into the house, and we just started from there.
My name is Miles. I work with Maggie. I've been working with her for 6 months, and I've been helping her get to use her iPad Pro to do her writing.
And he's extremely good at helping me, as I'm sure he is with helping other people.
She is a great lady who really wants to continue to do what skills she has. She wants to be able to write, and so we looked at the technologies that might make that easier for her. here's something that's making a difference to people's lives.
I don't know how I'd have managed without him, quite honestly.
She values the way we do it. The way we do it is non-threatening and cooperative.
But it's the personal approach that is so helpful, is to help me to go on being me, I think.
I get the feeling she may want to call me every now and again to ask, Miles, can you help me with this? If you have a disability or a limitation due to a life-changing event, please contact us. Doesn't matter, we deal with all the major disabilities, and I'm sure from the basis of the knowledge I have of all the volunteers, we can help you.
And I think that video screams out. We talked about there two things before we played it, or one big thing before that video, should I say. And that was about the personal approach, about being there to speak to someone like a human being. You're not throwing all these acronyms, the tech phrases at people. And I think that's really important. But I wondered, Alex, can you guess the phrase that is my favourite out of that video?
I have no idea. What's your favourite phrase, English?
It helps to be me, it helps me being me. I think that's the thing that screams out. It helps Maggie get that independence for technology, that she can go on and do something herself.
It's actually really interesting to say that, because whenever I do presentations, I start off with these words: technology levels the playing field. I know it's a massive cliche, and you and I both like our sport, but look at me, I don't have all my fingers, although I can do my job well. I've just got the technology that's going to help me, and for this lady, she's been a writer all her life. You know, when her circumstances change, she still wants to be able to do that thing, and that's what Miles has enabled.
Exactly. And it's really inspiring around what we can do and what can happen. So if you want to have a chat with Alex or myself, or indeed any of the team at AbilityNet, we'd love to hear from you. And you can get in touch via different ways. If you just need a wee bit of advice about how we've changed to remote support, or perhaps if you've got questions around technology, especially around assistive technology, something we specialize in. Alex, tell lovely people how they can get in touch with us.
Okay, so we've got email, inquiries@abilitynet.org.uk. You can use your phone to give us a ring. It's a free phone number, 0800 048 7642. Or you can visit our website at abilitynet.org.uk. We've got absolutely loads of content on our website, including My Computer My Way, which tells you how to set your computer up for your particular needs. And we've also got about 20 different fact sheets varying from technology for older people right through to keyboards and mouse alternatives, and stopping off at voice recognition and dyslexia. So we've got quite a lot of information on our website, and you can also find us on Twitter and Facebook. Just look for AbilityNet.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And our thanks goes to Mimi and to Zoe at Charity Digital for the kind invitation. And we'll now take any questions.
Hello. Hi, Chris. Hi,
Good
Alex.
afternoon.
Hi.
Hi, thank you for joining us. Thank you so much for your session. It was very interesting and very sort of enlightening to see how, people have been able to use tech and really make it part of their lives. And so we're now going to jump into our Q&A. Our first question comes from Gabriella, who says that they set up devices for the people they work with, but then once they have it, remote support is very challenging as they have limited literacy skills. And do you have any tips for them?
Alex, I'm going to come to you in this one.
Okay, so yes, remote support can be quite challenging. However, what we would say is that we have the ability to provide total remote support. So, for example, we're not saying to the client, you've got to click on this link or you've got to click on this word. What we can do is we can actually do some of the clicking for them. So if they haven't got much literacy or many literacy skills, it's not an issue. But to sort of amplify that question, I guess what the other thing that I would say is that if they haven't got very good literacy skills, you've got to do a bit of preparation work beforehand to make sure you're giving the clients the right technology. But we can walk someone through a process of doing things, and they might find it really, really difficult. But we've got lots of patient volunteers who can help the client do what they need to do. Isn't that right, Chris?
Cool. That's a good answer. Yeah, and I think remote support too is the way forward. And you know, when we look at remote support and we look at the general consensus these days of the initial kind of hesitation to use remote support, I understand with people with you know, the question around literacy. But at the same time, it's really important that we give people that option for that remote support so they're not waiting. You know, they're not delaying their use of technology, because as we all know, we're using technology pretty much 24/7 now, where it was, you know, used in smaller scale. Now, if you look at it, we are using it much wider across the board.
Okay, thank you. And do you sort of have any tips for how you can support people without physically being near them?
Yeah, so again, it goes back to what I said in the presentation. It's about taking time to support someone and just have that initial chat with them, because if you win their confidence, then you know you're going to, you know, you're not just someone that's going to be there to support their IT or digital need. You're actually there just have a quick chat with them, as I say, to win them around that way. And I find that telephone support is, even using Zoom, I can't get the words out today. Zoom is typical. It feels like a Monday today. But if you use Zoom, you know, it's about taking that time, using that or telephone service, just by speaking to them to win them around. And one of the big tips I would say is don't rush it, because there's so many stories. I was reading one last night on Twitter, that somebody had been provided remote support from an organization in Canada. And it was interesting to read the story to say that the person actually required about 6 or 7 different remote sessions because they were rushed. You know, if you are dealing with someone who really needs help and you think that they might not take it all in, what I would probably say to you is split it up into little sessions. So get the remote software installed, then that's session one. But session two is then you can start to look at what does the person need help and support with. I think that would be the key message.
Great, thank you very much. Our second question, excuse me, is sort of related, and it comes from Tracy, who asks, some geographical areas are really vulnerable, isolated, older people with low incomes and other forms of financial poverty. If they can't afford broadband and IT technology, are there any other ways of engaging with people? And are there any grants available for digital projects?
Well, funny you say that. That's something my day job is, so I'm the community relationship officer, looking at funds, looking at different projects, and there is across the UK. So if you're in Scotland, you've got the Connecting Scotland service from the Scottish Government, which is giving tablets to older people. They're getting brand new iPads or Chromebooks, and they're getting the internet provided for, I think it's 2 years now. And something that we just announced on Friday, and we're working with Good Things Foundation and DCMS on the Digital Lifeline. So by providing 5,000 devices to anyone with a learning disability. Now, if you are an organisation that does work in and around learning disability, what I would probably say is apply for devices through the Good Things Foundation. I'd recommend it because it's, you know, there's no cost to these devices. It's a funded project, and if you're saying to us, well, actually we can't afford to get technology, and someone has a learning disability, then get them on board. That's what I'm saying to all these different projects. There's lots of different funds out there too. I know the National Lottery in particular have had quite a big focus too around digital participation. But one of the other key players in funding is speaking to your volunteer centre, so your CVS. They have lots of different people within the organisation, and I personally think that dealing with the voluntary sector organisations has been amazing across the UK. Although it's quite funny, a colleague says to me, he says, "I would imagine the travelling you'd be doing." That's with technology, we can jump onto Zoom call very quickly with someone. But speak to your volunteer centre, because there are funding pots, particularly around the COVID-19 recovery and resilience. So again, I'd probably encourage you to check that out. But again, I'm happy to have a discussion with anyone on the call today that, you know, you just want to get a second kind of opinion on where funds could be perhaps reached. And again, we can chat after the session and extend the Q&A about that. But you've got to be patient with these funders, because there's so many people applying for funds for digital participation. And I think, you know, although we would like to do things rapidly and quickly, we can't.
I think it's just worth following up what Chris says. You know, we get lots of inquiries from people, say a social prescriber or an occupational therapist, saying, I'm working with someone who's got extremely poor mental health. I need to get funding for a computer or for a device. We'd love there to be a gigantic funding pot, but unfortunately there's not. And I think people don't really understand that applying for funding is actually quite a big task all by itself.
Absolutely. Our next question is sort of more around service delivery and comes from Hazel, who asks, did you provide your volunteers with the tech, such as laptops and iPads, to connect remotely with clients, or have they been using their own?
Alex, you have for me take this one?
Sure.
Yep. So volunteers use their own equipment. You know, before the pandemic, we would provide, if they needed to go and travel, provide them with travel expenses. But volunteers are happy to use their own devices and their own technology for that remote support. And again, we try and support that as much as we can, but we ask them to use their own equipment to do so. And remote support, really, you only need a laptop or a tablet to do that. And again, you know, most of the team, we've got a big team of just over 330, but most of the team have responded and said, yeah, we'll provide that remote support. Alex, have you got any thoughts on that one?
I would say that it's been amazing actually, because although a lot of the people that were volunteers for AbilityNet have really enjoyed going out and seeing people, a lot of them have got really into the new way of working. And, you know, as Chris said on the video, perhaps they don't talk about Coronation Street or EastEnders, but actually, in some ways, they're probably a bit more focused as to trying to get the job done. So I certainly think remote support has been a real revelation to the way that we've been able to provide client support over the pandemic, and I think that's all down to our wonderful volunteers, isn't it, Chris?
Very much so. And I think it's, you know, if your organisation is either looking at starting remote support, or even looking at, or you've done remote support, but you're just thinking, well, what else can we do? We find volunteer engagement is vital around that, you know, speaking out externally at the same time. You know, you're saying about providing them with devices. It's not just about providing volunteers with devices, it's actually about providing volunteers with that friendly kind of feeling that they can come to you. And that's the way, you know, I kind of, I still volunteer with the organisation, but from a volunteer perspective, you know, I don't mind providing it, but I can actually see the organisation want to help as a volunteer to progress yourselves for the training. It's all about self-learning and development at the same time. So, yeah.
And an engaged volunteer is a happy volunteer. If you provide them with ongoing training and support, they're going to be able to develop professionally and personally.
Brilliant. Thank you so much both for your insightful answer on that one. Our next question comes from Lisa, who says, we're a third sector umbrella organisation in Kirklees, West Yorkshire, and digital inclusion is a huge issue in our area that lots of groups are trying to tackle. Are there any AbilityNet volunteers or coordinators in our area that I can refer to? It would also be great for someone to come to one of our network meetings to introduce your work. Is that something that's possible or that AbilityNet offer?
100% we do. Don't we, Alex? We've got coordinators, two coordinators in Yorkshire.
Yeah, we certainly do, and I think it's we can certainly put you in touch with our local volunteers up there. If you care to drop us an email, we'll make the introductions. I think it's certainly well worthwhile talking to your local volunteers because they are IT professionals, but they've also got a really good handle on what's going on. So if you're looking for funding opportunities, or if you're looking at where to get a refurbished machine, they can also make recommendations. So we will certainly put you in touch with our local county coordinator. I'm just thinking at the moment, for 95% of the counties in England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, and Wales, of course, before most people start saying I'm not mentioning you, and we have got county controllers, and basically the county controllers are a really useful source of information, and we love coming out to see people and meeting people and talking about what we do, and even more if there's tea or biscuits. But I'm sure that when you're virtual, you've got to provide your own, haven't you?
Or cake. We do like our cake.
Okay, yeah, cake,
exactly.
cake's good.
But what I would say, Lisa, is I've popped both Alex and my email on the general chat. Give us a shout, and we'll make sure we can get someone along to the meeting, and certainly look at ways. But yeah, we've in Kirklees, it's a coordinator, Dave Power. So we can put you in touch with Dave, and there's a huge, I would say not huge, a large team of volunteers that serve that area. So I'd be more than happy to see what we could do for you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Chris, Alex, and to all of our attendees who've joined us here today.